This is Pastoring in the Digital Parish, your resource and point of connection for building digital ministry strategy and bringing your congregation into the digital age. What does the church have to learn from Amazon? E-commerce might have a bit more to do with digital ministry than we might have previously assumed. So, in this session of Pastoring in the Digital Parish, we're talking with Jason Caston about what our churches can learn from Amazon, how we can utilize AI tech like Alexa, and some of the ideas and technologies we might consider putting into our digital ministry toolkits as we prepare for the future of the church in the digital age. Let me tell you a little bit about Jason Caston. He serves a number of different roles. He's a digital marketing specialist for Amazon. He has over 19 years of experience in web and content development. He's made the rounds as a speaker and presenter, and Jason is a person of faith who has written several books about ministry in digital spaces, including the iMethod series and most recently, Digital Connections. My name is Ryan Dunn, and I learned a lot about what my church can be doing to get our content to the people who need it, and about what we can start doing now to prepare for a future that is increasingly AI integrated. You're going to learn a lot from Jason too, so let's get talking e-commerce, iMethod, and future tech on pastoring in the digital parish. Well, Jason, you're heavily invested in ministry, you're heavily invested in digital media and user experience. Professionally, you're kind of applying those trades both in consulting and for Amazon right now. What's something that you see happening in Amazon that you wish the church were doing as well?
The interesting part about Amazon is they have a heavy focus on automation and simplification.
Okay.
I wish the church would automate quite a few things. Now, the reason I don't see that is not necessarily because they can't, it's because they don't know the tools and the platforms to do it or even have the time necessarily to do it. So you got the human resource aspect of it. If you don't have the people, the technology resource, not understanding the platforms, the capacity, because a lot of times it's just the pastor and a few people doing it by themselves.
Yeah.
But automation is key at AWS, and they're always trying to figure out how can we do things better, faster, smarter. And churches have the opportunity to do that as well. And that's a lot of things that I'm trying to teach is find platforms and workflows to make things easier as opposed to trying to do things manually that traditionally they've just always done it like that. You don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah. I hear from a lot of pastors who are feeling spread thin because in a sense they're being pulled between two different campuses almost. It's like they have their traditional church ministry, the analog ministry, the church congregation as they know it, but they're also awakened to the idea of needing to be a digital presence and represent their church online. Putting on your consultant hat, like what is one way that somebody who's in that position might be able to pull in some automation to help advance their digital presence or digital ministry?
So I was just talking at a conference this weekend, iChurch conference this weekend, and the same question was asked. And the thing about it is, what we can do is if you take, let's say we're looking at hiring or developing a type of workflow where once you create your message, you want to start putting that content out on multiple platforms, as many platforms as possible in many different ways to reach different people. Then one of the key ways that I said you could do it is to find someone that can do it at a fraction of the cost of what you're thinking. So as opposed to you trying to figure out how to get it into podcast format or also put it out on these different social media platforms and cut the message up into these little clips for these, with captions for motivational moments and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Find you a virtual assistant that you can pay a small amount of money and tell them the stuff that you want done. And they can figure that stuff out. They can start taking your message and basically putting it into a machine, which is what I was talking about earlier with automation. That's what some of the largest pastors I see do. I worked with Jake's for a long time. He has a machine, and it's not a machine. The people it's a machine of people because he has a larger number of people working for him. But that machine can be duplicated for a smaller church with a smaller amount of people. And I tell people use Fiverr all the time and find a virtual assistant and work from there in creating, figuring out how many different ways you want to put this content to work that these pastors are brilliant at, week in, week out, content. And they're just they're only letting it work one time, weekend service, weekday service, and then they don't put it to work the rest of the week.
Yeah. Well, you've been a big advocate for having a consistent presence across all these different platforms, and not just consistent in that you're actually on these platforms and doing things, but that the message that you share is somewhat similar between all these platforms. And so something like that becomes a great way of taking like a singular message that you have and spreading it across all those platforms. You've also noted that the church tends to run a little bit behind. You noted that back in 2019. That's probably advanced a little bit now as we move into 2023. In 2019, you were inviting churches to move into utilizing AI tech, which touches on that automation part, things like Alexa. Have you seen this happening now? Are there some ways that churches are utilizing a smart speaker or an AI tech like Alexa?
I've seen it more. I haven't seen it enough. And hopefully the unfortunate part about it is the way I laid it out was, here's how you can get on Alexa. And it was, I think at the time, or actually currently it still is, it's free to do. But let's just jump back to the solution we used before. I was working with a guy who created a skill on created Alexa skill on Fiverr, and I believe it was about, let's say, $20 for him to create this skill. And so it actually is free to get on Alexa, but if you don't, have the technical expertise, we'll just say we hired a guy for $20. He created the skill, put it on Alexa, and basically it took the podcast that the church already had, turned it into an Alexa skill, so that every time you upload the podcast, it automatically updates Alexa. And so all this stuff. So those things I was trying to talk to the church about these are things you're already doing. I'm trying to get you on podcasts. You understand podcasts, but automatically let that podcast be updated on Alexa. So now you're on multiple platforms doing this, the same amount, if not even less work. But it's not about the pastor trying to figure it all out. It's about creating the workflow and the automation of processes to do that. And so I have not seen that as much as I would like to, but I have seen more churches take advantage of it than previously.
Yeah. Well, break that down for me a little bit, because as you start talking about a skill on Alexa, I'm not really clear on what that means. Like, what is a skill in regards to something like Alexa?
Absolutely. So let's get into it. So people understand app stores from their mobile devices. Okay, cool. So an Alexa skill is like an Alexa app. So basically, when you go to Alexa and you say, "Hey Alexa, play, Saint John Baptist Church's latest message," that's you telling Alexa to go to this particular skill, which is this app, grab the latest message, which is the latest podcast, and play it. So the same way we talk to Alexa about to do other things, play this song from Spotify or Apple Music and stuff like that, is the exact same way we create the skills to grab the messages from the podcast. And so, and that process can be automated. Once you create the skill and you're going into the Amazon developer platform and you're saying, where do you want to grab this skill from? You put in the podcast feed and they pull in the latest stuff. And that's how easy it is. But again, I don't want pastors or people who have their expertise in other areas to be trying to figure out these digital platforms. I want them to find people like myself who can help automate these processes so that they can do what they do well in their lane and we can do what we do well in our lane, and it all comes together. But as you said earlier, pastors spread thin trying to do multiple things. And that's unfortunate. And that's what I'm trying to get them to delegate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, talk to me about consistency a little bit, because sometimes I hear a message that I need to tailor my message to Instagram, tailor my message to Facebook, tailor my message on a podcast. That there's this subtle difference between all these platforms, and you say like, oh, you should be predictably the same in all those places. Why do you have that point of view?
I think you should be not. I won't say exactly the same, but similar. And the reason I say similar is because the term in the corporate environment is omnichannel. So across multiple platforms, the brand is consistent. And so the reason I say that we should churches should follow that as being consistent is I want them to follow the omnichannel approach to multiple platforms, because that's what we're used to seeing. When we're used to looking at things in the corporate environment or the platforms that we like the most, they're consistent no matter what we're looking at. Netflix is consistent across multiple platforms. The experience is consistent across multiple platforms. The content is consistent across multiple platforms. That's what I'm saying to the churches as well. The message on Twitter is going to be limited or different in the way it's presented, in that you have a limited number of characters. You have different ways of reaching your audience and different content you're using, right? That's my text, graphics, video, etc. It's different. So it's different than Instagram, which is more immersive, more video driven and stuff like that. But the message is going to be similar across multiple platforms. It's just been tailoring it. It's just a delivery based on how people receive the content and engage with the content on those platforms. And that is another thing that I was going to talk about from Amazon and AWS. It's data driven. Everything that we're talking about here is going to be driven by analytics. So when you look at the analytics and it tells you the data as far as what your users are doing, how they're engaging, how long they're engaging, what content they engage with the best, that's the data-driven decisions that you can help to start to create, which is the goal of all of this that I'm talking about, is creating this customized experience for churches, because our spiritual experience is the most customized experience we're going to have in life. And we're seeing that from the offline church experience, because when you walk into a church, your experience is customized to you as far as how your spiritual experience. But from the digital aspect, we could have that same customized experience, but churches don't quite understand it. But the companies and the corporations and the platforms that engage us the most, they get it because they're thinking for us.
Okay. Well, as you touch on analytics, let's dive into that a little bit. What are some metrics that we might want to pay attention to when it comes to digital representation? So
initially, every platform any church should use, they should look at the analytics. Now, social platforms already have analytics built in. Your mobile, your web, your e-commerce, add Google Analytics to that and start make sure to collect all that data. From that, you're looking at, we'll use web, for example, because that's easiest for people to understand. We're looking at what are the top 5 pages that they're looking at. We're looking at how long they're staying on the pages, the stickiness. What pages are they exiting most on? So usually you see that people come to a church site, they'll click on watch the live stream, they'll watch that for a certain amount of time, and then they'll leave. That means all the rest of the site is not engaging enough for them, not immersive enough for them. It's not capturing what they want. When you look at to the top pages, you're starting to see what content is most important to them. Besides the live stream, besides the location and service times, besides the giving page, do you have any content pages that they like to read? Because now you want to see what topics is your audience most engaging with. And we all have, life problems or life situations that we know the church has solutions for. And so if you see people start to engage with stuff about faith, marriage, relationships, a whole bunch of topics, then you can start to develop content and build a digital strategy around that. So that's kind of where I'm saying, look at the analytics to see what they're doing and then start to create an experience that's based around that. And then from there, that's initially the first part of creating a digital experience, is reacting to what they're doing. The next thing you want to do is what our, Steve Jobs said a long time ago is, you start to, you don't ask them what they want, you start to tell them what they want. And from a spiritual perspective, we know, we know what type of things we want to help guide people in having the best, in helping increasing and improving their faith-based walk. So we start guiding them towards those solutions, those answers that we know the church has, we know the pastor knows about, and we start putting those into the digital experience.
But is that a process? Like, first, you really need to be paying attention to the user and their questions more than trying to drive their responses?
Exactly. It absolutely is a process. And that's what we've seen. We've seen these other platforms do. Amazon, when we first started using it, we were just buying stuff, but it wasn't recommending stuff because it didn't know what we wanted yet. Then it got to the point where it was recommending stuff. Facebook, the news feed was way different when we first started using it to what it is now, the echo chambers and the good and bad parts of that, Twitter and Instagram included. And we won't even get to TikTok. So, it's just those platforms. First, initially, they get to know the user, respond to the user, and then they guide the user.
Yeah. Well, you know what, though? We might need to get to TikTok because it's a fresh platform for most of us. And that means that what you're talking about there is really visible for us because we jump onto the platform and the algorithm is just feeding us everything, right? I mean, we look at all this content that just doesn't seem to make sense. We don't know what we're doing on the platform until we find a couple videos that we like. And then all of a sudden, every time we're clicking onto the platform now, it's, filled with stuff that we just can't click away from. Our eyes are drawn in. Are you seeing it with some of the ministries who you work with? Are they reporting that there are certain kinds of content pieces or pages on their websites that are more sticky like that?
No, I haven't seen any that have reported that's what's more sticky in terms of the type of content. I've seen them report stuff that's more sticky in terms of when they start to create these customized experiences that have a multitude of content. And by that, I mean, there's an actual customer journey that they're looking to create for, their users. And by that, I mean, think about it like this. And I'm always going to use offline church examples for online churches.
Yeah, great.
When you have a new members class, there's a process. You think about to become a member of a church. You think about it. The pastor has the invitation. You get up. You walk down to the front of the church. You say, "I want to join this church." They take you to the back. They say a few things to you, and then you start your new members class. That's let's say 5-6 steps. That basically is a customer journey from I'm sitting in the pews to I become a member of this church. That's a whole entire journey. If you start from then however they connected with the church to them getting to the church, that's even expanded journey. What I'm saying is you start to look at the journey from an online perspective of if I want to help this user learn, get more solutions about, and say our focus for this month is marital solutions or marriages, help empowering and strengthening marriages, then we start to look at how do we create this customer journey to help our married users get to content that helps build them up. Well, when they get to the page, we start to show them, things that are related to marriage based on keyword topics that we find out. And so from there, it could be, we start to use what's called triggers on pages. And triggers are stuff where you get to a page, you scroll so far, and something pops up and says, "Hey, give us your email, 15% off." Or you scroll to 50% of the page and you see something else happen. The page is responding to you and how far you go, what you click on. And then that's where you start to guide them to where you want them to go. And that's a whole entire customer journey. They get to a landing page, from clicking to something, we talk about a marital conference, we talk about a marital solution, we have a blog post about, hey, this is what happened in my marriage, how I made it better, 5 ways to make your marriage better. And then you keep going along to whether you either engage them while you say, hey, capture their information to stay connected with them, or whatever the solution is that you have. A product you want to get them to, pastor has a message, stuff like that. But you have to think that stuff through and create that. They call it a content strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Which really, to put that in terms of that we might be more comfortable with in the ministry world, is like a pathway of discipleship or something like that. Now, I have this unpopular opinion that really it replicates a marketing funnel, and that you have your points where you meet people and then you move them to one level and then move them to the next. But In fact, it really is like a similar process in terms of moving people deeper into, as you put it, a user experience or an experience. What are some of the, I don't know, common triggers that you've seen come out, or ways that that ministries have employed, as you called them, triggers in their websites that help push people along on the journey? Or invite people along on the journey. I don't want to use the term push. They invite.
Absolutely. I like the code switching using different terms.
Yeah.
Because I showed a marketing funnel at the conference as a visual aid to exactly what we were talking about. And I was like, this is the funnel, but I said I'm just using corporate terms for things that we do in the ministry space. In terms of examples, I've seen ministries use here's the best example I've seen used. I've heard many ministries say, we want to make sure this happens above the fold. And above the fold is before you scroll down, the first outside of the first screen that you see on the load. Well, above the fold is based on screen size, device, etc. So basically, you're saying I want to show this above the fold, and once they scroll beneath the initial screen that you see when you load up, then something happens. That could be and usually I'm thinking of it from a conference perspective. Once you get below the fold, then we want to show a pop-up that talks about this particular conference that we're putting on. So that is one of the examples I've seen used most, especially working for a ministry that put on a lot of conferences. That was something we always talked about. What's above the fold? What's below the fold? Once they get below the fold, what do we want to happen? What are we showing them, and what do we want to happen as far as like a pop-up or something like that? And basically, that's just a built-in trigger.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. And I'm triggered by this as I'm looking at Digital Connections, which is one of your books behind you there. Yeah. We can get really tempted as we get a little bit more advanced in our technological developments to go really deep in terms of things like website design. And so I would also want to call our attention back to what you call forth in Digital Connections, that people are probably looking at your website looking for several key pieces of information, and then we don't want to lose sight of those things. Can you outline just what a few of those items are?
Yeah, a few of the things that I've seen, no matter the site, there's a few key things. And I'm going to talk about the key pages, for example, were live streaming, giving page, service times, and how to get to your location and stuff like that. Those were top key pages. And then, of course, they were looking for spiritual-based solutions. Do you have anything where you talk about spiritual-based solutions to life's problems? Stuff like that. Those were top pages. But from the user experience, there was, can you get anywhere on your site within 3 clicks? Does your site load within 3 seconds? If the site doesn't load within 3 seconds, normally you lose 50% of your audience. The next 3 seconds, you lose 50% more of your audience. And I think in 6 seconds, you lost 75% of your audience just because your site took too long to load. I built a lot of sites on WordPress. That is, when that loads fast and works great, WordPress is one of the best solutions. When it's not working great, it is by far the worst, one of the worst. So that's some of the things that you have to look at. And when it comes to another ways with the user experience is make sure there's multiple ways that people can receive your content. By that, I mean video, text, and audio. There's different ways that people like to receive content. And then here's a new one. I don't even think I talked about this in the book, but I've seen it come up a lot for churches and in the corporate space, and that's ADA compliance. And so for ADA compliance, that's a big deal now, making sure anyone can access your site. And little small things for that are, alt tags and images that, people who may have are disabled and can't see and are blind are able to, as your screen reader is going down your page, they know what's going on based on you filling out this information and making sure your site is ADA compliant. There's drawbacks to that. If you don't make it compliant for, certain users, you can run into issues.
Yeah, I've heard some of the forewarnings that suits could be coming. Well, in fact, we've heard of it in the podcasting realm where there are actually lawsuits have been brought for people who have not made their content available to people who are differently abled. So, and you're saying that some of the ways that we can start to act on that right now is just making sure that as we upload an image to the website, that we've got a good description in there. The alt text is relevant to the image as well. Sometimes we want to pack that with with certain keywords that we think are going to help, but to actually make it relevant to what the image is important then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And I think I was just reading the other day, we were told carousels are not nearly as compliant as we thought. So stuff like that, you try to move away from that and move more towards hero images and hero banners and stuff like that, as opposed to multi-carousels. So just small little things like that you have to look at for ADA compliance.
Yeah, you said back in 2019 that carousels were kind of passé, that they were dead.
Yeah.
Speaking of looking back like that, it was 10 years ago that you started telling people about your iChurch method. I'm not going to make you rehash what all that is for us. They can contact you to get what the iChurch method is. But what is one thing from those early days that you're still kind of waiting for the church to act on?
Wow. Let's see. Early on, what was it? Websites, multimedia, social media, e-commerce, and mobile. I think the things from early on, I think the thing that I would say was not even necessarily a particular aspect of the iChurch method. It was the continually playing catch up aspect of it. The stuff I was talking about in 2013. I taught from two perspectives. I said, here's what's going on now, but here's what I think is coming. And when we talk again in a year or 2 years or what have you, it's going to be new stuff. And I didn't want the church to try and do everything, but you have to do something. But it seems like there was always we're fine. Things will just, there was always this, things will always be fine as they are, as opposed to we're trying to get ahead of the curve. There was never an approach to trying to never a plan or strategy to try and get ahead of the curve. And so therefore that is still the thing to this day.
Yeah. Well, is there something now where you say hey, look, this is coming? I mean, you have a pretty unique location and working for a company like Amazon that you get a glimpse of some of the things that are coming down the pike. Is there something that you see on the horizon that is oh my gosh, the church would really benefit from getting on board with that? Yeah.
No matter how many times we talk, I'm always going to have something to say about that question. And so the buzzword answer, and I'm going to go away from this, but I'm going to give you the buzzword answer just to say, here's what I think people would say and answer that, would be VR church, metaverse. Facebook or Meta is putting so much money into that, so VR church is on the horizon. But that's not the case yet. That's ahead of its time, but that's, I'd say, probably about 7 to 10 years out, because of the devices are too hard. But here's what's coming next. It's AR. And the reason I say AR is coming next is because glasses, which me and you both have on, are easier as a digital device for adoption than putting on an Oculus or some type of VR headset. The three, I would say three so far, the major advancements in the digital platforms, starting with people getting home computers, and I think it was dial-up getting into homes, going to mobile devices, which made social media take off, to now I think the next thing that's going to really take off is going to be AR and glasses, because the devices will drive. There has to be a technology that drives whatever the next digital wave is. And I think churches would have a great opportunity with this, because if I have on digital glasses, there's two good examples that I like to use. Yeah. One, you can have this digital layer over this offline experience. And so a digital layer could be think back about Clippy, using Microsoft Word. If you had somebody, I'm coming to your church, I'm a new visitor, and I want to know where the new visitor section is. If I have my digital glasses on, there could be digital signs that I can only see in AR that are guiding me to here's the new visitor section. Here's where you take your children. The children's ministry. Here's where you all sit. All that stuff could be in VR, where you only see it with using the VR app for this ministry. But here's the best application that I think is going to be a game changer. And I know corporations will take advantage of this. If I'm sitting there at your church and you're preaching a message on, we'll say, the Sermon on the Mount, and as I'm watching you preach this, I have my digital AR glasses on, and next to you, I see an actual digital enactment of what you're preaching. That's a much more innovative, immersive experience for me because I'm watching what's going on. Now, VR, I'll take it a step further and I'll be fully immersed in it because it's like a whole metaverse. But for the sake of AR example, I can watch what you're preaching about actually happening while you're preaching it in real time. And that to me is what the type of experience I see coming down the line for that can be built for churches. There's a lot of different moving tools in that happening, but the technology is already there for that to come to fruition.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. Well, and I can imagine that you could also use that space for putting scriptural text up there or song lyrics. I mean, really, all the things that we kind of use these stationary screens for within our worship space, or in my tradition, like the hymnals that we have in the back of the pews. Yep. Those things could be moved online to, or moved to that augmented reality. Oh, that's cool to think about.
Absolutely.
In looking at your iChurch method, is there anything else that you would add in now as we move into 2023?
Yeah, I started off with those 5 areas because those were the most relevant to me in 2012, 2013 when I got started. But since then, I've added a 6th area, and I just call it innovation. And from an innovation perspective, it's the things like Alexa, AR, VR, and the new digital platforms as they continue to evolve. That I can tell churches, hey, this is what's coming down the line. Start to think about this. But also including automation that we were talking about, because I really want churches to think of it from a perspective of how can we make what we do in the digital space easier, but also how can we put this content to work harder. So that's the thing. I feel like the more we talk about this stuff and the more people start to understand the conversation and the ease of it, then the more they'll be able to adopt these methodologies.
All right, right on. Well, people may want to keep up to date on some of the things that you're developing. Where is it? Get in touch with you and get your insights just on its own, right? Where's a good spot for them to start to get in touch with you, Jason?
The easiest way would be you could go to jasoncaston.com. You can go to ichurchmethod.com. Platforms I'm on are Twitter, Instagram, TikTok sometimes, and of course the normal Facebook. But those are the ways to stay in touch with me, and I'm always utilizing the platforms. I actually respond and talk and engage with people about these particular topics because it's a passion. It's fun to talk about these things and actually implement these solutions.
Yeah, well, I have a ton of fun with it too, and had a ton of fun talking with you, Jason. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, and I appreciate it. I'm glad you reached out. I thoroughly enjoy doing things like this.
Yep, Jason Caston is one of those smart folks who scooped up their personalized web URL. You can find him at jasoncaston.com. This podcast has a personalized URL too. How about that? It's pastoringinthedigitalparish.com. That's where you can find more episodes and show notes. If you were into this conversation, then I suggest checking out 9 predictions for the future church from October of 2022, or check out Leading a Church's Vision in Digital Ministry. That one was released in May of 2022. And while you're doing all that listening, drop a rating or a review on your podcast listening platform of choice. I thank you for that in advance. Again, my name is Ryan Dunn. I would like to thank resourceumc.org, the online destination for leaders throughout the United Methodist Church. They make this podcast possible. And of course, they host our website. Again, that's pastoringinthedigitalparish.com, where you can find more online resources for ministry as well as other episodes. If you want to connect, check out the Pastoring in the Digital Parish group on Facebook. And you can also send me questions and ideas for future sessions at digitalparish@umcom.org. Another session comes next week. In the meantime, I'll leave you with this. Peace.